Hi class, we're going to go over how to write a formal lab report for chemistry class today. And this will be on YouTube, so if you're at home writing your formal lab report and you need some clarification, please go back to YouTube and listen to this again. So, why do we make kids write formal lab reports? Well, it's a skill that you need if you embark on any career in science. And it's helpful to learn how to write a report so that you reflect on what we did in class and helps provide practice with critical thinking. So, whether you end up going into science or not, this is a skill that will help you in grad school, a research institution, or industry. If you are a scientist, you need to learn to report your results and be able to do it in a way that can be published. So, what have we done in the past? Well, we've kind of done what we've done all year long in terms of filling out a pre-printed lab report, filling in information and data, and showing your calculations and answering a few questions. But we're starting to ask kids to think more critically and learn to express themselves with writing. So that's why we're going to go over a formal lab report. Now, the format can be different for every class, and as you probably will see, this one's a little different than what you might have done in physical science or biology, and will probably be different than what you do in college. I've tried to simplify it into 6 sections: a purpose, hypothesis, procedure with an integrated materials list, meaning you don't have to call out the materials list separately. We can group your data and observations. We can include your calculations if there are any with the results, and then conclusions. And if there's any post-lab questions, we'll do that there in the conclusions. All right, so I'm looking for about 2 to 3 pages typed. The report should also include the title of your lab, the date, your name, and your partner's name. And what I would love is a graphic or a picture that might be related to the concept at hand, perhaps a diagram of the setup, something that is meaningful to what we did. So let's go through each section. Number 1, the purpose. This should be a statement, not a question. So I'm not looking for how does the density of the elements change as you travel down the oxygen family. I'm looking for density trends in the oxygen family will be investigated. A statement, not a question. Okay, number 2, hypothesis. We've been doing this all year long, so this shouldn't be new, but I'm looking for you to write it in complete sentences and typed in a formal lab, okay? It should be a prediction of what you think will happen, all right? It may be incorrect, and that's okay. It should be in there no matter what, and we can address it in the conclusion if it's incorrect. Section 3 is the procedure. Here we're going to include the materials. This should be a detailed but concise, that's a key word, concise description of the investigation of what you did, all right? It should be good enough that someone or one of your peers would be able to replicate the experiment exactly the same way, all right? Information that does not affect the outcome should not be included. Pictures are worth 1,000 words, so diagrams are wonderful. Okay, here's something you might not know. Procedures need to be written in what's called the passive voice, okay? Because it doesn't matter who's doing the work. So, what is passive voice? I think you guys are familiar with this, but let's just practice a couple. So, the first sentence, I transferred the contents of the beaker to the graduated cylinder. How can we change that to passive voice? Maybe it goes something like this. The contents of the beaker were transferred to the graduated cylinder. See the difference? All right, let's try another one. I found the slope of my graph to be 0.04 grams per minute. Why don't we just change that to say the slope of the graph is 0.04 grams per minute? I think you guys are getting the idea. I added 3 drops of indicator to the Erlenmeyer flask. How about 3 drops of bromophenol indicator should be added to the Erlenmeyer flask? Okay? You get the idea. So, when is passive voice not necessarily? Well, really, you don't need to use it for anything but the procedure. In fact, it can be kind of awkward. So your purpose and your conclusion, sometimes it's nice to write it not in the passive voice. But with that said, we generally do not like to use the first person singular pronoun. That means I. Let's try to write these reports eliminating I. What I like to do is sometimes if I think I'm done, I print it out and then I scan through my lab and circle anytime I use I, go back and take it out. All right. Section 4, data and observations. All right. Data is the numbers, while observations are the things that we look like color or heat or quantity. That is a observation versus quantity as a measurement off of a scale, okay? Data should not include the calculations. We're going to do that later, right? It's best to organize this in a table or a chart, right? Here's where we put our calculations, section 5. We put our calculations, we show some examples of formulas and sample calculations, all right? We're going to analyze the results here and we'll calculate a percent error if the lab asks us to do that. Section 6, conclusion and post-lab questions, all right? We're going to look back and think, why did we do this lab? What did it mean? How well did the experiment go, and was my hypothesis correct? Okay, and if it wasn't correct, this is when you deal with it and you address it. All right, how does the lab connect to what we're studying? And are there any questions that the teacher's asking me to answer? That's what we do in section 6. All right, one last thing before I send you on your way. Remember, don't use the singular pronoun I in your report. All right. So for example, from the color of the endpoint, we can conclude. No, you say from the color of the endpoint, one can conclude, right? Because someone else might be doing the lab. We don't want it to take on that only you can do the lab, right? So thanks so much. Hope this helps and look forward to reading your lab reports.